if there's one animal that's got genuine grandeur, it's a bear. All things bear-like are our subject here, and yes, walruses are distant relatives. But something puzzled early naturalists. Who are the relatives of this red panda? Bears or raccoons? Actually, there are 8 bear species. 2 are found only in Asia, and they're named after the moon and the sun. And then there's the world's largest land-based carnivore, who's also a dab hand in the water. Everybody loves them, but what makes a bear a bear?
Well, they're furry, warm-blooded, have paws with claws, and an incredible sense of smell. In Alaska, one of these legendary predators has just woken up, and it's hungry. These high mountain ranges, with their remote valleys and deep snow, make the ideal location for a grizzly's den. After sleeping through the harsh winter, the warming spring breezes have stirred this ravenous bear from its 6-month hibernation. Now that it's awake, it has one thing on its mind: food. Over the winter, bears lose up to 1/4 of their body weight, and now they have just a few summer months to put it all back on. They nibble on a spring starter of roots. With their highly sensitive sense of smell, 100 times more powerful than ours, these bears search for food wherever their noses take them. The newly budded hillside plants are at first nourishing enough, but like humans, bears are omnivores, and after a few months of vegetarianism, they start craving food with a higher fat content. Their noses quickly home in on their summer main course. Grizzly bears are usually solitary, but now they gather in large numbers around the choicest swims, waiting for dinner to arrive. Each year, thousands of salmon flood back to the rivers in which they were born to spawn their own fry. Having run the gauntlet of fishermen's nets and hungry seals, the salmon now have the ravenous bears to contend with. This is a battle of instincts. The bears know that these fish make an excellent meal, if they can catch them. The grizzlies have around 2 months to fill their stomachs with as many salmon as they can get their paws on. When the salmon become scarce, the bears make their way back up into the mountains. Finishing off their summer meal with more berries and leaves, these bears have put on over 200 kilograms and can now weigh nearly 700 kilos. As the winter snows begin, the grizzlies, massive and fat, are ready for their prolonged after-dinner snooze. No more eating, no drinking, No urinating and no defecating. These obese bears will return to their dens and sleep solidly for the next 6 months. What's a walrus doing in a program about bears? A good question.
To find out, we need to step back 38 million years to the end of the Eocene period of geological time. Back then, bear dogs roamed the forests of subtropical Eurasia. These fearsome hunters were half bear and half dog. But they were about to evolve into something quite different. A new opportunity would soon burst onto the evolutionary scene. The extinction of the dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous is the best known event in geological history. Once the sea-dwelling dinosaurs died out, the rich feeding grounds of the oceans were ripe for exploitation, an opportunity for new predators to dive in. It's easy to imagine that bear dogs, living along the coast, would begin to forage into the sea for food. Over time, scientists believe they ventured further into the marine realm and spent longer there. Eventually, unlikely as it may seem, bear dogs gave rise to the great granddaddy of the seal world, the walrus. Its landlubber origins are betrayed by the fact that, like all seals, it comes to the surface to breathe. The limbs of the bear dog ancestor evolved into flippers. These can propel the walrus through the water at over 30 kilometers an hour. Another major challenge for land-dwelling animals that take to the Big Blue is the cold. Heat loss is 27 times faster in water than in air. In these Arctic seas, a human would only survive for a few minutes. But with a layer of blubber up to 10 centimetres thick, the walrus spends 2/3 of its life in the sea, without a shiver. When the water's extremely cold, it transfers blood away from its extremities to its vital organs deep inside. With so little blood in its skin, it looks almost ghostly white when it comes ashore. But after a spot of lolling in the sun, the walruses are restored to a ruddy pink. And pretty soon they will look like a row of portly Englishmen who've been sitting too long in the midday sun. Unfortunately for the walrus, lying on the beach, even venturing ashore at all, can be risky. On Wrangel Island in the Arctic, their distant cousins, the polar bears, are on the prowl. Few animals could tackle a walrus weighing a ton, with metre-long tusks, all that blubber, and skin 4 centimetres thick. But the polar bear is up for anything. This polar bear tests the walruses one after the other, jumping onto their backs to find the weakest. The long-lost cousins are reunited at last, but as predator and dinner. The polar bear spares no thought for any distant family connections and tucks in. An unlucky day for someone. But there are still plenty of sea bears left to hang out on the beach. Like the walrus, there's another surprising descendant of those ancient fish-eating bear dogs, raccoons. But the furthest they venture into the water is to forage for crayfish. And now a bear that isn't a bear. Or is it?
In the 19th century, scientists were obsessed with classifying the animal kingdom. But one creature posed a bit of a problem: the red panda. In 1821, Nathaniel Wallisch, a Danish botanist, sent a red panda pelt to London so that it could be officially classified as a species new to science. Scientists there puzzled over this specimen, wondering what it could be related to. Was it a bear or a raccoon? The word panda probably comes from an ancient Nepali name meaning bamboo eater. In fact, the red panda, which lives in the high-altitude forests of China, Nepal, India and Burma, is more than that. It will also feed on fruit and nuts, and even mice and birds' eggs. 150 years later, scientists finally concluded that the red panda isn't a bear at all. It's halfway between the raccoon family and the bear family. So the red panda isn't a true bear, but its much larger namesake is. In 1913, the world learned of the discovery deep in the forests of China of another bamboo eater. These really are bears. Their feet and teeth give the game away, and modern DNA tests have proved their lineage. This panda, nearly 20 times bigger than the red panda, and from a different family, was dubbed the giant panda. Males can weigh in at over 100 kilograms. The strange patterning of their fur is still a bit of a mystery, though it's been argued that it provides camouflage in the light and shade of the forest. "99% of their diet is bamboo. But the panda's digestive system is strangely ill-designed for digesting the tough plant material, so 4/5 of it passes straight through. This means that to get enough energy from the bamboo, the giant panda has to spend 10 to 16 hours every day just eating. Such fussy feeding habits have led to an unusual adaptation not seen in any other bears, a sort of thumb, an extra 6th digit which helps them hold the bamboo. Restricting your choice of food to just one plant is a risky strategy, and the giant panda has a precarious future. With only 1,000 left in the wild, they could be eating their way to extinction. So nothing could help them more than the conservation of their bamboo forest, stronghold and refuge of the last wild panda bears. Some bears have a sweet tooth. Do you know how they satisfy their craving for sugar? Well, forests have their own sweet shops. Berries. These are rich in sugar, and a single bear can pack away more than 200,000 in a day. Stalking through Russia, Alaska, Canada and Greenland is a bear perfectly adapted for survival in the coldest places on Earth.
Weighing an impressive half a ton, polar bears are the biggest bears in the world. It's the middle of winter, 0 degrees on a good day, minus 60 on a bad one. Unlike grizzlies, polar bears don't hibernate. Only the pregnant females make their way to the deeper mountain snow and dig themselves in. And it's here, tucked under a protective blanket of snow, that they give birth to their young. Only when the first rays of sunshine warm the outer layers of the den will the mother emerge. With her litter of cubs. After suckling them for 4 months in the den, Mum is happy to be outdoors. But she's seriously underweight and starving. The cubs are too young to venture far, but each day she takes them for walks to get them used to the great outdoors. Something the curious males are already well accustomed to. Now that spring is here, they're on a mission to find the ocean. Frozen for months, it's about to thaw and provide them with a plentiful bounty of seafood. During the winter, nearly 30 centimetres of fat kept the cold out. They've used a lot of that, and they need to top up their insulation. These pools of thawed water are used by resting seals, which makes them a favourite hunting ground for polar bears. With their sensitive noses, they can smell a seal, alive or dead, over 30 kilometres away. This 3-year-old male has just killed a seal pup, but if he's not careful, he'll lose it to a more experienced and aggressive elder. Of all bears, only the polar bear lives exclusively on meat. As the ice floes break up and continue to melt, the polar bears think nothing of taking a dip in the chilly water. They're excellent swimmers. Their thick coats of hollow, air-filled hairs provide insulation and make them buoyant. Polar bears have large, hairy feet. They're slightly webbed and are good paddles. Even the soles of their paws are covered in tiny hairs called papillae. Once on land, their big feet act like snowshoes, stopping them slipping on the ice or sinking into deep snow. Searching for food, our hungry mother has also brought her youngsters to the coastline. But she's had to travel at the pace of the slowest cub, so she arrives later than the hundreds of other bears who congregate here annually. Having spent the whole winter alone, this is their only sociable time of year, and many of the males practice their fighting skills. It's a very short summer though in these northern latitudes. In a few weeks the females will head back into the hills. The males will wander off alone once again, and the seals will breathe a big sigh of relief. Even researchers at NASA, the space agency, are interested in bears. How do they sleep for so long and wake up with little loss of bone mass or muscle tone? If astronauts could do that, maybe they could hibernate to Mars. You might think Southeast Asia is an unusual place to go looking for bears. But in the tropical forests of Thailand, there's not just one species, but, heavens above, two.
There's the Asiatic black bear, also known as the moon bear because of the crescent moon on its chest. And the smallest of all bears, the sun bear, its beautiful chest markings resembling the setting sun. Finding them in the forests is tricky. Both bears like to spend much of their time in trees. Unfortunately, being hard to find doesn't mean they're free from human persecution. They're hunted for meat, taken for the pet trade, and killed for use in traditional medicine. But the future for these endangered animals is not all bleak. At the Banglamung Breeding Centre, just south of Bangkok, they've 65 of these magical animals with the moon on their chests. At the centre, run by the Thai Royal Forestry Department and supported by the World Society for the Protection of Animals, they're taking the first steps to redress the balance. Reintroduction, which is much more than just transporting them back to the forests and waving goodbye. In fact, there are 7 steps to haven. A safe, wild haven, that is. The first is to get the rescued bears into the centre, where a close eye can be kept on them. Since most have been in cages so small they could barely turn around, having room to move is the second stage. Space to manoeuvre and work on their fitness. Stage 3 involves selecting those bears fit enough to survive in the forest and allowing those who are really badly treated time to adjust. So far, 20 moon bears have been identified as possible freedom candidates. The fourth step is the big room, a huge area in which the pre-release bears get a chance to interact with one another, forage, and generally try out all the things they learnt in stage 2. Peering through the fence on the other side of the centre, the even more endangered sun bears are in their own big room, climbing, socialising, and generally going about the bare necessities. There are 30 of them here. They look placid, but they have a reputation for being dangerous, with a tendency to attack without provocation. However, such scare stories can be exaggerated. The sun bears have a vested interest in the goings-on next door, for if all goes well with their moon bear cousins, one day they might also experience the pleasure of being released back into the wild. Stage 5 is in the making. Up north, a large area of natural forest will be fenced off in preparation for Stage 6, the actual reintroduction. In time, the fence will be taken down and the bears will be free once more, completing the story with Stage 7. So what the Thai Forestry Department learn here could well decide whether future generations get to see moon and sun bears roaming their natural home.
Someone once said, "The more I see of man, the more I love my dog," and these old friends are our subject. This is how dogs started out. And this, possibly, is how their life with us began. We take a look at the wild dogs in the heart of Africa and at coyotes in the cold of Yellowstone National Park. Of all dog family members, foxes are one of the most adaptable. They actually seem attracted to us, or certainly to our cities. But we start with the animal which has a particularly bad reputation with us humans.
The wolf. The very word carries with it a shiver of fear, and human legends are full of their terrifying qualities. Brutal savagery, devilish cunning. Yet wolves are in fact sophisticated social creatures, whose pack life is somewhat like our own family life, where squabbles are frequent, but bloodshed rare. Bared teeth challenges are often made, but long before any harm is done, the weaker wolf shows submission, and a hierarchy of status is established. The dominant members of a pack have a confident stance and growl warnings to insolent subordinates. They also use a whole series of facial expressions, tail positions, and other gestures to stop infighting. That's how they interact with each other. But somewhere along the line, they began to interact with us too. Yes, it's we humans who caused the wolf to evolve into the dog. The wolf's partnership with man began in prehistoric times. Wolves are found in North America, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and Northeast Africa, so there was plenty of opportunity for them to come into contact with humans. It's thus very likely that they scavenged around the many campfires of early man. The wolf's domestication might have started with an orphaned cub being taken into the human circle. As wolves are among the most socially complex of the carnivorous mammals, the cub would have readily transferred its loyalty to its foster parents and have adopted the human family as its new pack. The wolf is pre-programmed for domestication, its family structures knitting neatly with our own. But there's nothing stopping it going wild again. And that's what the descendants of the Indian wolf have done in Australia, in the form of the dingo. Probably domesticated about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, it's thought dingoes were brought across to Australia by Asian seafarers, where they once again went wild. Now they roam the outback, a living reminder of what the earliest domestic dogs must have looked like. Sheep, cattle and goats were domesticated at more or less the same time as the dingo. And since then, dogs of all sorts have served as the guardians of our herds. And in the middle of a flock of Namibian sheep is the closest thing you'll get to a real wolf in sheep's clothing. It's a type of mastiff. They're used to guard the flock and have been specially bred to look like their charges. This keeps the genuine sheep calm. The dog treats them as fellow pack members and is always on the lookout for predators such as wild dogs and hyenas. But one of the first uses man may have had for his four-legged friend was to hunt. Egyptian engravings show dogs similar to the greyhound. You now read their names at a racetrack, but King Solomon also refers to them in the Bible. Bred for speed, they're the fastest of all domestic dogs and can hit 70 kilometers an hour. Greyhound racing is a multi-million-pound business in Britain, and when their racing days are over, the dogs also make good pets, being gentle and even-tempered. And the same applies to many other descendants of that first primeval wolf. Dogs come in all shapes and sizes, and some studies show that people with a pet dog are happier and more content than those without one. Did you know that in Brazil, the cry of the maned wolf is said to herald a change in the weather? Oddly enough, it's also known as the stilt-legged fox. It's thought its long legs are an adaptation to help it see over the tall pampas grasses. Let's head for Africa now. They sometimes call them painted wolves, but they're actually dogs. African wild dogs.
The strange thing about them is not their beautifully patterned coats, which make them look painted, but the unusual structure within the pack. With social animals, it's normally the young males who leave the group. But with wild dogs, it's the females who emigrate. Intelligent and adaptable, they live in groups that average about 7 or 8 adults, though the groups can get much larger, and they specialise in cooperative hunting. Usually, the dominant male and female breed, with the rest of the pack bringing back food for the alpha mother and her litter. When the pups are still small, the alpha female stays with them. She takes no part in the excitement that builds up as the rest of the pack prepare for the hunt. Her turn will come as the pups grow older. Then she sometimes joins the hunt, leaving a subordinate female, perhaps her sister, to take over her duties. Approaching their prey at a slow walk or trot, they try and find a sick animal or a young one. When the animals take flight, they chase one individual, then another, until they find and isolate a slower, more attackable quarry. African wild dogs can maintain a running speed of nearly 50 kilometres an hour for up to 5 kilometres, though most prey is overtaken long before that. When one vulnerable animal is singled out, the other dogs abandon their chase and concentrate on it. Back at the den, the hungry pups and the mother await the hunter's return. And here they come. The cubs beg from the alpha male and the other returning dogs by licking their faces. And the adults then regurgitate the meat from the recent kill. Rabies, persecution by man, and a lethal canine distemper caught from domestic dogs have all combined to make the African wild dog an endangered species. In fact, it's already extinct in some places. It's hoped, however, that inoculation of domestic dogs near game reserves, captive breeding, and public education are slowly turning the tide in the wild dog's favour. Did you know that some native African dog breeds possibly come not from the wolf, but from jackals like this one? Skeletal remains of the silverback jackal have been found in Africa near some of the oldest human fossils, both dating back nearly 2 million years. Some of the most successful members of the dog family are the foxes. They range from the deserts of southern Africa all the way up to the Arctic.
But you also find them here, on the slopes of the Andes in Ecuador. This is a Paramo fox. Lightly built, they're designed for tackling small prey like rabbits and rodents. But they don't waste their energy hunting if there's a carcass to scavenge, and a dead horse makes a good and easy meal. A red-backed hawk joins in. Living in conditions that could hardly be more different is the Arctic fox. This one still has its thick white winter coat, which camouflages it against the snow. To keep warm, it even has fur lining the soles of its feet, and it only starts shivering at minus 70 degrees Celsius. The tiny grey fox, only 22 centimeters high at the shoulder, is found all the way from Canada to Venezuela. It has claws almost like a cat, and is a better climber than any other fox. Here in Belize, on the Caribbean coast of Central America, it's raiding the nest of a mockingbird. Out here in the rocky semi-desert of southern Africa lives the Cape fox. Well adapted to its sun-baked world, its elongated ears, full of blood vessels, are an efficient way of losing heat. And when the sun dips down in the Kalahari Desert, another African fox puts in an appearance. Looking for scorpions, its huge ears cupped like radar scanners, it listens for the slightest rustle. The bat-eared fox is the only member of the family that's specialized in the hunting and eating of insects. The red fox will also eat insects, but not if there are lots of rabbits around. It has perhaps the widest distribution of all foxes, and you find them in the Arctic Circle, the deserts of Central America, Europe, and the Asiatic steppes. This one's in Britain. Like their Arctic cousins, they bury surplus food and then dig it up later when they need it. This might explain why there's a massacre when a red fox gets into a chicken coop. It's probably hoping to store the extra hens that it's killed, then finds it can't actually carry them all away. In many places, the green of the countryside has given way to the buildings and roads of towns. With this urbanization, the populations of many wild animals have dwindled. But the red fox hasn't turned a hair and has become a streetwise city dweller.
In Bristol, in England, Tabitha Newman has been studying the phenomenon of the urban fox for the last 3 years, part of an investigation by the University of Bristol, which has been going on since the 1970s. Here she sets a trap in a volunteer's garden and baits it with a piece of chicken. She will tag the fox that she catches and so be able to recognise it wherever she encounters it. It's thought foxes began to drift into towns as early as the 1930s, though others argue that this didn't happen until myxomatosis wiped out most of the rabbit population in the 1950s. Whatever the case, by the 1960s you were almost guaranteed to see a fox in Bristol after dark. As Tabitha continues to set her traps, it's not the increase in urban foxes that interests her, but a dramatic fall in their numbers. At their peak, there were 33 foxes per square kilometre. But within 2 years, nearly all the foxes were dead from mange, caused by a small mite, and it was estimated that only 3% of Bristol's population had survived. Looking at this fox's ear tag, Tabitha can tell it's a local male who has 2 females in his territory, both with litters. He was struck by the mange, but residents have been feeding him with a homeopathic remedy inserted into scraps of food, and it seems to be helping.
Okay, brilliant. Right, thank you. All right.
Despite all of this local help, what surprises Tabitha is how slowly the foxes have recovered from the plague of mange, and how low the population densities have remained. And so, after dark, she goes out looking for them. Several adult foxes in the area have been fitted with radio collars, each set at a different frequency, and Tabitha can tune into them individually, and so build up a picture of where they are, the size of their territories, and how the population is recovering. Every encounter is carefully logged. While tracking the signals from a female, she spots one of this year's litter, still too small for a collar. It looks healthy and she knows she's getting close to the mother. Tabitha only has her radio tracking equipment, but with the aid of an infrared camera, we can see the collared mother that Tabitha's listening to. She's found some food. By the light of her headlamp, Tabitha dutifully records this fox's location. The next day, Tabitha gets a call from one of her volunteers. The chicken bait has worked and there's a small fox in their trap. It was probably born in the city, possibly under a garden shed, and is certainly already skilled at exploiting the resources available in the suburbs, like feeding on our leftovers and, in autumn, eating the windfall fruit in our gardens. Like the youngster Tabitha saw in the street, this one is also too small for a radio collar, but it will be tagged and then released unharmed, so that the study of Bristol's urban foxes can continue. Foxes are one of the carriers of the fatal disease rabies. But did you know the spread of rabies in Western Europe has been controlled by putting vaccine in fishmeal pellets and then dropping them over the countryside, sometimes by air? Our final stop is in North America's Yellowstone National Park.
This might be a geological hotspot with more geysers than anywhere else on Earth, but in the winter it's an inhospitable sub-zero place. Yet there's a member of the dog family that lives here, and it too has been the subject of a long-term study. North American coyotes are smaller and lighter than wolves, and they live in smaller, unstable packs. You'd think this would be a disadvantage. Yet despite all human efforts over the last few hundred years to exterminate them, the coyotes have managed to survive, and the wolves haven't. As a result, some people believe coyotes to be the most intelligent of the whole dog family. A storm is building up, and the coyotes have to decide whether to carry on foraging for food or whether to stay put. Their thick winter coats are excellent insulation, and they decide to stay where they are, curl up and sit it out. Their hardiness and endurance are so amazing that when the storm passes and the clouds finally lift, the coyotes simply dig themselves out of the snowdrift. Straight away, the first coyote begins looking for something to eat. And it's not far off. 5 trumpeter swans are also recovering from the storm, but more slowly than the coyotes. The rivers and lakes, kept ice-free throughout the winter by warm springs bubbling up through the rock beneath, are a perfect swan refuge. But one swan is slower than the others. Perhaps it's sick. It's in the coyote's territory, and if it doesn't move fast, its days are numbered. Swans are big, strong creatures. Taking one on is quite a challenge. Meanwhile, the other coyote has also dug itself out and found a meal. A much smaller one, but anything will do. Wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone in 1995. It was thought they might have an effect on the coyotes, and in fact the coyote numbers have declined. But it's hoped that these 2 members of the dog family will soon settle back into the balanced coexistence they enjoyed here for thousands of years.